History records the victories of strong men, but the collapse of empires? Those always begin with the weak.
The most dangerous people in your life are never the strongest. They're the ones who feel weak, ignored, and powerless, because that's when a human mind becomes unpredictable, manipulative, and quietly vicious. If you've ever wondered why someone weak suddenly turned toxic, I will show you exactly how and why it happens. Welcome to the Prince's Doctrine. Let's discuss first the anatomy of the weak mind. Weakness is rarely loud. It doesn't walk into the room swinging. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't roar. Weakness hides. It smiles. It obeys. It adapts. It submits until it doesn't. And when it finally breaks, it breaks in the worst, most unpredictable way. Every dangerous betrayal in history, every silent act of poison, every unexpected explosion starts not from power, but from powerlessness. To understand the psychology that makes weak people dangerous, we must begin with the truth no one wants to face. The weak do not stay always weak. They transform, and the transformation is never pleasant. Here is the birth of hidden weakness, where it all begins. Weak people are not born weak. They are trained into it. From childhood, they are rewarded for being compliant, quiet, agreeable, not for being truthful, assertive, or strong. They learn that conflict is unsafe, that anger is unacceptable, that saying no brings punishment, and expressing their needs makes them difficult. So they evolve a different strategy: suppress, hide, endure, smile. A child who cannot fight back learns to survive by shrinking. But every emotion they swallow, every humiliation, every fear, every unmet need becomes a stone at the bottom of the mind. These stones don't disappear. They accumulate, they compress, they harden into psychological pressure. History gives us a brutal example. Adolf Hitler, humiliated, rejected, ignored in his early life, transformed his sense of weakness into an extreme, destructive hunger for dominance. His rage wasn't born from strength. It was born from powerlessness. Weakness, left untreated, does not create peace. It creates monsters in slow motion. What's destroying you? The mask of niceness. Weakness in disguise. Once a weak person becomes an adult, they learn a simple social truth. People trust the nice. People protect the harmless. People reveal their secrets to the soft. And so weakness evolves into a mask, the mask of niceness. Not genuine kindness, niceness. The kind of niceness that exists to avoid conflict, to stay liked, to remain invisible. They apologize too quickly. They agree too easily. They over-explain. They give compliments they don't mean. They smile when they're uncomfortable. They forgive what they shouldn't forgive. But underneath that softness lives something darker: resentment. Because being nice is exhausting when you're doing it to survive. Niceness becomes a cage, and resentment becomes the animal inside it. This is why nice people often explode in unpredictable anger. Not because they are peaceful, but because they've been suppressing their true emotions for years. As philosopher Machiavelli said, "Beware the man who has nothing to lose. He is the most dangerous." The nice mask hides someone who feels powerless, and powerless people eventually break. You know what's fuel the weak people rarely confront. They avoid. They swallow their pain. They pretend things don't bother them. But every act of pretending creates a new layer of resentment. Resentment that has nowhere to go but inward and back outward in twisted forms. Weak people don't express anger directly. They show it in ways that give them psychological safety. Sarcasm, guilt-tripping, silent treatment, passive punishment, secret jealousy, backhanded compliments, sudden coldness, forgetting, responsibilities, subtle disrespect. They become experts at quiet rebellion. This is why weak people are often more dangerous than openly aggressive people. The aggressive person is predictable. You can see their attack coming. But the weak? Their attacks are silent until it's too late. Consider Brutus, the man who stabbed Julius Caesar. He wasn't the strongest general. He wasn't the most ambitious. He was seen as kind, soft-spoken, harmless. Caesar never feared Brutus, until Brutus's quiet loyalty turned into betrayal. Weak people become dangerous not because of strength, but because of resentment, hesitation, sudden eruption. The victimhood reflex, the weak person's shield. Victimhood is the weak person's armor. It protects them from responsibility, consequences, blame, shame, and growth. When someone weak makes a mistake, they don't admit it. They shift into victim mode. I didn't mean to. You misunderstood me. I can't help it. Everyone is against me. It's not my fault. You're being unfair. This reflex gives them power. When they play the victim, they gain sympathy, protection, and moral superiority. Weak people love victimhood because it gives them the illusion of strength, without the burden of accountability. And the moment someone starts to enjoy victimhood, they become emotionally dangerous. They learn that if they cry, complain, or show suffering, others will bend. Victimhood becomes their manipulation tool. History again warns us. The French Revolution was triggered not by the strongest, but by the oppressed, the powerless, the hungry. People who felt like victims rose with terrifying violence, destroying everything in their path. Victimhood, when fueled by resentment, becomes a weapon. The stupidity of weak people is they love rules until they break them. Weak individuals demand structure, fairness, boundaries, and rules. But only for others. They insist people treat them kindly, while they quietly judge. They demand honesty, while hiding their true feelings. They call for loyalty, while gossiping behind backs. They want others to be predictable, so they can move unpredictably. When weak people break rules, they justify it. I had no choice. It wasn't that serious. Everyone else does it. I deserve a little freedom. In their mind, their weakness makes them morally exempt. This inconsistency makes them dangerous. You cannot predict what a weak person will do when they feel cornered, embarrassed, or ignored. Here is the answer of your questions: why weak people make fear-based decision-making. Paralysis disguised as morality. Weak people avoid decisions. They fear regret, judgment, responsibility, and confrontation. So they disguise fear as morality. I don't want to hurt anyone. I'm trying to be a good person. I don't want problems. Let's not make a big deal out of it. But beneath that, goodness lies. Insecurity, indecision, fear of consequences, fear of conflict, fear of being exposed. They become paralyzed, unable to take decisive action, yet full of internal anger at themselves for being passive. This internal conflict eventually externalizes as manipulation, because when people cannot control themselves, they try to control their environment. When weakness evolves into manipulation, weak people do not have the courage to confront you directly, so they control indirectly. They weaponize guilt. After everything I've done for you. Silence. If they cared, they'd ask why I'm upset. Selective helplessness. Can you do it for me? I can't. Emotional withdrawal. I'm fine. Sympathy. You know how hard things are for me. Subtle pressure. I guess no one cares anymore. These tactics allow them to exert power without risking open conflict. This is how weakness transforms into dark psychology. When a person feels powerless, they seek control in the shadows. The weaker they feel, the deeper they sink into manipulation. How? The weak man's secret desire for control. Weak people pretend to dislike power. They act humble. They speak softly. They behave submissively. But inside, they crave control more than anyone else. Because for them, control is not about dominance. It is about security. The weak man controls to protect himself. He controls conversations, narratives, relationships, people around him, even his own emotions. He does not want to lead. He wants to escape fear. This is what makes him unpredictable. A strong man uses power to expand himself. A weak man uses power to hide himself. And someone who uses power to hide is capable of anything when cornered. Now first, recognizing the weak in your circle before it's too late. Weak people do not look weak. They look helpful, polite, compliant, emotional, friendly, sensitive, good-hearted, harmless. But here are the signs. They avoid confrontation, but hold grudges. They apologize too fast, but their behavior doesn't change. They gossip behind backs, but act innocent face to face. They get jealous easily, but hide it under fake support. They play the victim when corrected or criticized. They become cold suddenly, without explanation. They use guilt as a tool to get what they want. They show selective helplessness, weak when it benefits them. These people are psychological landmines. They don't explode immediately. They wait, silent, unpredictable, growing more resentful with every passing day. And one day, when you least expect, they strike. The weak are not dangerous because of their strength. They are dangerous because of their psychology. Suppressed emotions, hidden resentment, victimhood, justification, moral inconsistency, fear, emotional denial, desire for control. Weakness is a slow, silent corruption, a poison that accumulates quietly until it becomes explosive. Weakness doesn't remain quiet forever. At some point, the suppressed emotions, silent grudges, and buried insecurities become too heavy for the mind to carry. And that's when something terrifying begins to unfold. The weak stop suffering in silence and start making others suffer for them. True danger is born not when a weak person breaks, but when they decide you must pay for their brokenness. The transformation is subtle at first, like a small crack in glass, barely visible, but one shift, one pressure, one moment, and the entire thing shatters. This chapter exposes the exact psychological shift that turns weak people into saboteurs, manipulators, traitors, and ultimately, destroyers. Don't forget the shift from powerless to predatory. A weak person reaches a breaking point where they cannot tolerate their own helplessness anymore. The moment they snap, a new identity emerges. The weak predator. Not a predator who hunts through strength, but one who hunts through insecurity, resentment, and fear. This predator doesn't attack head-on. They attack sideways. Sideways attacks, the indirect, the subtle, the untraceable, cause the deepest wounds. This is how weak people fight. Quietly, indirectly, emotionally, socially, psychologically, in the shadows. And their favorite battleground is not the physical world, but your mind. Because weak people cannot overpower you physically or intellectually, so they overpower you emotionally. They cannot win openly, so they win by stealth. They cannot dominate, so they destabilize. They cannot rise, so they pull you down. Next, see the birth of the hidden enemy. Archetype. Every powerful person in history was destroyed not by an obvious rival, but by a weak, quiet, overlooked individual, close enough to strike. Julius Caesar, killed by his loyal friend Brutus. Gandhi, assassinated by a man who felt insignificant and unheard. Malcolm X, betrayed by fragile egos within his own circle. Countless emperors, toppled by servants, advisors, lovers they underestimated. It's never the lion who bites your throat. It's always the snake under your foot. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers, the ones closest to you, if they are weak, will someday strike to feel powerful. Weak people become dangerous because they seek what they lack: significance, validation, relevance, emotional revenge, psychological victory. Next, look the stages. The first one. Stage: subtle sabotage. Before a weak person becomes overtly destructive, they start with subtle sabotage, the invisible poison. They cannot confront you, but they can. Ruin your reputation quietly, slow down your progress, disrupt your plans, talk about you behind your back, plant doubts in other people's minds, give you wrong advice on purpose, forget important details that affect you, withdraw help when you need it most, introduce chaos where stability exists. This doesn't happen suddenly. It builds slowly, like a fog thickening around your ankles. One of the first signs a weak person has turned into a threat is when they become passive-aggressively helpful. They pretend to support you, while ensuring their help actually weakens you. History gives us a brutal example. During the fall of the Byzantine Empire, several advisors helped emperors with information, but twisted it just enough to cause fatal decisions. Weak advisors destroyed more empires than strong enemies ever did, because the weak hide behind good intentions, while planting seeds of failure. The second stage. The emotional attack. When subtle sabotage doesn't satisfy their need for control, weak people escalate. They turn to emotional warfare, the weapon they understand best. Their attacks look like sudden guilt-tripping, emotional blackmail, unpredictable mood swings, dissolving into tears to avoid accountability, using your empathy against you, accusing you of being cold, selfish, or uncaring, withdrawing affection or attention, making you feel responsible for their emotions. Weak people cannot win through logic or strength, so they win through emotion. This is why people often say, "She was so kind at first, until I didn't give them what they wanted." Weak people treat relationships like life support machines. You exist to keep them emotionally alive. When you stop feeding them validation, reassurance, control, attention, their niceness dissolves and their inner chaos surfaces. Emotional warfare begins. The third stage. Social assassination. Once a weak person realizes they cannot control you directly, they move to the next battlefield, your reputation. Weak people destroy socially because society listens to the victim, society protects the fragile, society punishes the strong, society empathizes with weakness, so they weaponize their perceived fragility. They smear your name with half-truths, emotional exaggerations, selective stories, lies coded in innocence, dramatic narratives where they look like the hero or victim. They don't need to prove you wrong. They just need to make you look unsafe. One quiet whisper from a weak person can ruin years of trust. This is why Machiavelli said, "A single whisper can ruin a prince." Weak people never start wars. They start rumors, and rumors start wars. Look at Marie Antoinette. She was destroyed not by the strongest noble, but by fragile, envious courtiers, who whispered in the right ears, building a storm that ended with her execution. Weakness spreads faster than truth. The fourth stage, the betrayal point. The final stage is the most dangerous. When a weak person decides you are the reason they feel small, that's when betrayal occurs. At this stage, their psychology shifts into something almost darkly spiritual. They believe, you deserve punishment. You made them feel this way. You are the oppressor. They are morally justified. They are finally taking back power. In their mind, betrayal becomes justice. That's why weak people can betray without guilt. They genuinely believe they're right. This is the moment Brutus convinced himself he was saving the Republic while stabbing Caesar. This is the moment a loyal friend suddenly sells you out. This is the moment a partner cheats for the first time. This is the moment an employee leaks your secrets. This is the moment your own blood undercuts you. Weak people betray quietly, indirectly, and efficiently. They never feel responsible, because in their narrative, you made them do it. The psychological factor that makes them dangerous. Nothing to lose. When strong people get angry, they calculate risks. They think before acting. They have something to protect. Status, dignity, reputation, goals, relationships. Weak people? They have nothing to lose. This is why they are unpredictable. Give a weak person enough resentment, enough jealousy, enough humiliation, and they transform into someone blind to consequences. History is full of examples. Assassins motivated by perceived injustice. Employees who sabotage corporations after feeling overlooked. Nice neighbors who turn violent after years of bottled resentment. Weak political figures who unleash chaos to feel relevant. Weakness produces emotional desperation, and desperation is far more dangerous than strength. A strong man thinks before he strikes. A weak man strikes before he thinks, because the strike is his only way to feel powerful. The moment weakness becomes evil. Weakness becomes evil the moment it decides, if I can't have control, no one should. This is the mindset behind jealousy, sabotage, betrayal, character assassination, blackmail, manipulation, revenge, toxic behavior. Weak people don't want to win. They want you to lose. Their entire psychology revolves around avoiding humiliation. If they feel you overshadow them, they turn dark. This is why toxic behaviors come from insecure minds, not strong ones. Strength brings stability. Weakness breeds destruction. The real reason. Weak people turn dangerous. A strong person becomes dangerous because of capability. A weak person becomes dangerous because of instability. Weakness creates a paradox. They want love, but they resent the people who give it. They want help, but they hate that they need it. They want respect, but they don't earn it. They want power, but they fear using it. This emotional contradiction makes them psychologically explosive. They want to be seen, but they fear exposure. They want to feel strong, but they lack discipline. They want connection, but their resentment pushes people away. This internal conflict is the real root of their destructive behavior. Weakness becomes dangerous when resentment turns into revenge, victimhood becomes a weapon, niceness becomes manipulation, insecurity becomes sabotage, helplessness becomes justification, jealousy becomes betrayal, fragility becomes entitlement, insignificance becomes rage. The weak do not destroy you with strength. They destroy you with their chaos. And unless you can recognize the transformation from powerless to resentful, to manipulative to dangerous, you will never see the attack coming. This is the truth most people learn too late. Danger doesn't always walk into your life as an enemy. Sometimes it arrives as a friend who needs help, a partner who just feels insecure, a colleague who just wants to feel included, or a relative who just wants attention. But weakness, when left to rot, ferments into something darker. A person who refuses to build strength begins building excuses. A person who refuses to face their fears begins blaming others for them. And a person who refuses to take responsibility begins rewriting reality until you become the villain in their story. History has always punished those who underestimated the weak. Empires didn't fall because of powerful armies alone. Many collapsed from the inside, poisoned by envy, betrayal, and insecurity from people who felt overlooked. One angry servant toppled kings. One jealous advisor destroyed entire dynasties. One insecure friend ended legends. Weakness weaponized is more destructive than brute force because it hides behind innocence, softness, and sympathy. It strikes when you're unguarded. It spreads through guilt. It thrives on emotional confusion. But here is the doctrine. You cannot eliminate danger. You can only detect it early. And awareness is your shield. When someone's insecurity grows faster than their loyalty, when their need for validation becomes more urgent than truth, when their resentment quietly deepens while they smile in your face, understand this. The transformation has begun. Your job is not to fix them. Your job is to see them, to recognize the shift, to maintain distance before their chaos becomes your downfall. Because in the end, it is not the strong who undo you. It is the weak you failed to notice.